Well, now joined for more reaction by Labour lawyer Michael Bargraim. Michael, very good evening. You've heard Ruben's request, which is for a 10% public sector union demanding a 10% wage increase. What is your immediate reaction to some of the things that he said? Sorry, you seem to be muted. Can't quite hear you, Michael.
Yes, sorry, I apologize for that. My first reaction is that the reality is that he's not going to get the 10%. You've outlined it exactly what government said. They've put aside 20 billion. This is going to cost them an extra 40 billion. They don't have the money in the first place. You can't squeeze blood from a stone. And as you know, government itself is pressed on all sides. There's been fraud, corruption, theft, you name it. I mean, Ruben's outlined all of that. Yes, people have stolen, and he's not justifying the extra money, saying, well, if they've stolen, that's their problem, but if it's not there, it's not there. The other real problem is, of course, that the unions don't trust government anyway. If government says we put aside 20 billion, they don't trust them, because you saw what happened in that 3-year agreement where they had all signed, shook hands, and hugged each other after signing the agreement, and then government reneged on the 3rd year and ran to court and said, no, we're not going to give it to you. Now, that was duplicitous at the best of times. So you can understand where unions are coming from. They're saying, we don't trust these guys. It's all very well they're saying they've only got 20 billion and we haven't got more, but they don't trust them. And this is what happened, is that these fruits from that poison tree of government have come to bear, and unions feel very strongly that they're being lied to. The reality is, of course, it is wrong to budget first and then negotiate afterwards. There's something inherently wrong with that. In other words, to say, well, we've only got 20 billion. Okay, so now let's negotiate. I mean, how ridiculous is that? They're making up their mind beforehand and then telling the unions, let's walk there. I mean, it doesn't make any sense either.
Michael, what also appears ridiculous is that half the problems of government are self-inflicted. And in all fairness, they can't have their cake and eat it. They can't be responsible for so much fraud and mismanagement of funds and then say, we don't have money to pay you anymore because we've gone and misused or abused the funds that were in our keep.
Yeah, I made that point, and I make it again. You're absolutely right, that they have, amongst themselves, squandered all the money, whether it's fraud or theft or just misspent, or bought fancy cars for ministers and have lots of security. If you cancel all the security for ministers, they probably have the extra money to pay the unions their 10%. But that being said, it's happened. It has happened. Who to blame? Well, it's another debate. But where we are at the moment is they have the 20 billion. I don't even know if they've got that, but they're saying they've got that. They've put it aside. If it's not there, just because they stole it doesn't mean that the money's going to be found somewhere else. I don't think they have. They have got another area to find it. And we've spent most of that money on SAA. The real problem is that the unions are still in that tripartite alliance with government. And being in that alliance, they've been crooked, basically. The whole alliance is using the unions as some sort of fall guy, and they want voting fodder, but they're not prepared to talk honestly and openly with them. And so what we're seeing now is the stand down between unions and government. Government saying we haven't got, unions saying we have to have, and then in reply, government saying, well, if it's not there, it's not there. And the unions are then saying, but you stole it. Give it back or something. I don't know where you're going to find the money if it's been stolen and the money's sitting in Dubai. That's not going to happen. So what we have now is we have this showdown at High Chaparral. And it's sad that we've got civil servants who are actually being paid better than the private sector. It's sad to say. The economy is tanking, and we're getting very close to a failed state. Can you imagine if they call out this mass strike, this mother of all strikes, and call out the entire civil servants.
Yeah, Michael, you raised some key issues that I wanted to speak to, and I suppose we have two sides to this coin. The one side is that of government, which is the rational side, and they say we have 20 billion, this is all we're prepared to give you. But public servants, on the other hand, are emotive. For them, they don't really care what government has. They say fuel has gone up 35% in the last few months. So has oil and other things, certainly domestic oils, electricity, meat, public transport. All those costs have gone up, and you expect us to shoulder all of that. Now, after all that's happened in the last 24 months, we can ill afford a strike of the proposed nature.
Well, of course we can't, but you see where they're coming from. The unions don't trust what government's telling them. Quite frankly, nor would I. And government's telling them they haven't got the extra money. The unions don't believe that. And why don't they believe it? Because the government has been lying to them all along. And I mean, it's been for years now. Despite the fact they're in partnership, COSATU is still in partnership with the ANC, the governing party. But they don't trust each other anymore. Why the tripartite alliance still exists, I don't know. But the cornerstone of any negotiation has to be some trust. If someone says, listen, my pockets are empty, here we are, I can show you, I've got bare hands, I've got nothing else. And then they're saying, yeah, but we know that you've lied to us in the past, and you've got another pocket somewhere else, and give us the money, and we're not asking for a fortune. What we're asking for is to try and even tread water, because with a less than 10% increase, they've outlined the argument that they're actually going downhill.
Is it a fair argument?
All those increased. Yes, of course it is. It's absolutely fair, because they are going downhill. They're going to end, if they get a 5% increase, I don't even think it'll be 5% with the 20 billion, but let's say they get a 5% increase. Well, inflation's been higher than that. And so the argument is a solid one. But you can argue until you're blue in the face. If someone hasn't got to give it to you, then it's not going to come. And then we're going to destroy the system even more. It's almost like saying, well, petrol's gone up, so I'm going to blow up my car. That doesn't make sense either. So we need a decent mediator to step in, a group or someone that maybe even the CCMA can step in. At least the unions trust them. They don't trust government, nor do I. But at least we can all trust the CCMA and let some of their most senior negotiators come in and sit down and talk this through. They're not going to trust anyone from the governing party, understandably, and they're not going to just trust government at all. But you and I are living in South Africa. We're all living here. We're hoping for a brighter future. With the mother of all strikes, we're going to go even further down. The floods, the COVID, all sorts of issues are bad. But can you imagine topping all that with the cherry on the cake of a massive strike across the board? None of us can actually face that at all. We've got no electricity. We've got all sorts of ills. It's like the plagues are coming upon us. And this will be another one. And we can't afford it. And I would expect both parties to say, let's try and find a mediator that we both trust. Let's have someone who can get proper information. And let's not hear lies from government, because government does tend to lie to the trade unions. Let's call a spade a spade. And so I'm sympathetic to the trade unions, but they've got to also be sympathetic to the fact that there is no money. So you've got to try and marry those two positions. It's a tenuous situation, really, really bad, in that both parties are digging their heels in. And you know what the saying is.
Yeah, Michael Bargraim, I certainly appreciate your time, and he's a labour lawyer giving us insights into that public sector union demand of a 10% wage increase.